In Indian Hinduism, the Sanskrit word Shambhala, meaning place of tranquility, was used to describe the same subterranean kingdoms, and many other mythologies around the world describe different entrances to these subterranean worlds as well. Also, many secret societies and occult organizations concur with this, talking about surviving antediluvian civilizations. Then, of course, we have initiated authors, such as Jules Verne, who wrote the classic novel Journey to the Center of the Earth, which was not just a story originating from Verne's imagination. It was an early, soft disclosure. So what are they preparing us for? Could it be that the beings that people claim to have encountered and channeled are not extraterrestrials, but intraterrestrial? Many people might ask themselves how civilizations can survive beneath Earth's surface, where it's supposedly dark without any sunlight. Again, secret societies and occult organizations talk about a black sun, which supposedly lighten up at least parts of the underworld. But besides that, the subterranean world is not all that dark, which has been proven by expeditions that have entered and explored underground tunnels and caverns. This has been shown in numerous different TV documentaries. Sunlight is not necessary to sustain life. It can be sustained from heat and chemicals provided by the Earth herself. The subterranean world is also full of rivers, lakes, and even oceans, which provide fish, shrimp, and other marine food. According to Robert Sepper, if the trees and rainforests were cut down, we would still be able to breathe, thanks to aquatic plant life, such as algae, which brings us back to the alternative subterranean light sources. There are, for example, bioluminescent mushrooms and even glowing algae, both found in underground cavern and in water. These plants, or some of them, can also most likely serve as food for humans. Many of our visitors have probably heard of Hyperborea as well, a place supposedly located inside the Arctic, i.e. the North Pole. Mythology will have it that Hyperborea is populated with tall Aryans or Nordics, being another surviving civilization from Atlantis. Also stating that the Earth is not hollow but honeycombed. If this is a fact, which there is a lot of evidence for, it's even more interesting if we consider bees and honeycombs being associated with Orion.
All right. And please, guys, don't fight over the race stuff. It doesn't make any sense. If a black person wants to know about ancient history to find out if people are black in ancient history, let them find out. Like, just don't do it to us. Just relax, okay? I don't like it when people start to go, you know, you shouldn't be asking about race. No, we should be, because we need to know. You got to remember that black people's entire ancient past have been robbed and stolen away. We don't know anything about ourselves. We're one of the very few races of people on this planet that are completely lost. Thank you, Czar, for the $35, and thank you, Walking Bankroll, for the donation as well. You got to realize that we don't know who we are. We don't know anything. Our history has been completely erased and modified and changed, which has a direct effect on our consciousness. So it's like if you were adopted and then you have a quest, you have this inner yearning to find out who was your mom, who was your dad. And people spend their entire lives researching and trying to trace and track down who their original parents were. It's this yearning inside. So if you hear a black person asking questions about were these people black, or were they black pharaohs or whatever, don't chastise them. Don't get angry at them. Don't write, we're all the same race. Yeah, we know that we're all the same race. I mean, that's common sense. But what we're trying to say is we're trying to get down to understand like who we are, where do we come from, what are we connected to? Because if you look at the most chastised and most abandoned and most abused people on the planet Earth, unfortunately, right now, it's black people. For thousands of years, it's been this way. And so people are just trying to reconnect to find, is there any semblance of anything in ancient history that had any honor and dignity? Or have we always been beat down and downtrodden our entire existence? That's an important question to ask, don't you think? Just for the psyche, just so people can understand, like, man, are we always in this situation like this? Have we always been the worst people on the planet in terms of the way we've been treated? Or was there a golden era where we had, we had a time that we had good things going on, and we lived good, and people didn't abuse us and kick us and shoot us in the back of our heads? I think that's a real honest and a simple question to be wanting to know. I mean, it's not even like a stretch to be like, hey, were there any black people back? I want to know too. That's why I did last week, I think it was, I did the hidden black queens and kings. I'm going to do a part 2 of Egypt, the ancient land of Chem. People need to know that. They just need to know, to feel connected to something. It's a natural human instinct to want to know where you came from and what you're connected to. What was your past like? What was it like back then? And so that's why I do these videos. It ain't about black people are better than white people and all this other kind of stuff. It's just to educate and bring forth information that might bring some closure or some confirmation to some people, to make them feel like, wow, okay, it's good to know that it wasn't always the way it is right now.
The humans he claims to have encountered in the subterranean world are all tall, blonde, and beautiful women and men, suspiciously similar to how Hitler depicted Aryans, the master race. Many of our visitors have probably heard of Hyperborea as well, a place supposedly located inside the Arctic, i.e. the North Pole. Mythology will have it that Hyperborea is populated with tall Aryans or Nordics, being another surviving civilization from Atlantis. As discussed in part 1 of this series, these humans correspond quite well with the Namlu'u/Aryans I discussed in the WPP, who fled underground during the Titan War, which destroyed an earlier version of Earth, in ancient texts called Tiamat or Maldek. Putting all the pieces together, it seems reasonable to conclude that there are several different races living underground, some of them being more benevolent than others. In the WPP, the second and fourth levels of learning, where I wrote about the Titan War, I mentioned that some of the Vulcans, who were Titans and of spiritual nature, changed sides during the battles for unknown reasons, and thus betrayed the spiritual realm. Those who survived allegedly fled underground, while others who did not change sides but were captured were placed in stasis in the underworld. The traitors could very well be the species that Hitler and some other mediums were contacted by, the not-so-benevolent kind, while those from Hyperborea correspond better with the Aryan/Namlu'u refugees, our ancestors. I tend to listen to Robert Sepere's channel. He's a rogue anthropologist, who is also a researcher of alternative history such as Atlantis and many other civilizations and mythologies. He's not aware that the original Aryan race had black skin, but he raised an interesting question in one of his videos, where he pointed out that there is a black African tribe with blue eyes, which of course is highly unusual, so I researched that a little further. I did find an article on a website that specializes on Africa, where the author made a brief but interesting statement. Quote, Some have also suggested that blue eyes are a result of ancient interbreeding with the Neanderthals who went into extinction about 25,000 years ago." End quote. Whether this is true or not, I can't say with any certainty, but this brings us back to the time of Atlantis and the blue-eyed Neanderthals, whom I discussed in the WPP and elsewhere on our blog, raping Homo sapiens women who then bore hybrid children. Besides the rapes creating hybrids, this is up for discussions, however, as it also seems to be scientifically proven that our common ancestors were blue-eyed as well, which we will discuss further here below. Robert Sepher also says that up until about 5,000 years ago, the Asian people were mainly blue-eyed, spoke an Aryan language, and the swastika, which is originally a symbol of the Mother Goddess, was their emblem. Then the Asian Aryans were mysteriously extinct. Sepher suggests it might have been a natural catastrophe of sorts, but to me that's highly unlikely. There are, according to Sepher, certain tribes today that are related to these ancient Aryans, but are still far removed. He also mentions the Chinese, Iranians, Iran, Aryan, Phoenicians, and Egyptians having Aryan ancestry, i.e. antediluvian ancestry, to a higher degree than other human bloodlines living on Earth today. Note that in no way is it better or worse to be of a certain bloodline/ancestry. It's only related to the physical body and not the soul and spirit. It is only relevant to our earthly 3D experience. The research I'm currently doing is only done out of curiosity and an attempt to set our history a little straighter. Another thing Robert Sepher and I agree on is that Homo sapiens come from Cro-Magnon, who were taller, fair-haired or red-haired, and had blue eyes. The question is, were Cro-Magnon black or fair-skinned? Well, I did some research, and lo and behold, the early Cro-Magnon were dark-skinned, just like the Aryans were supposed to be. Quote, according to DNA research, early Cro-Magnons like this one had really dark skin, Nielsen told Live Science in an email. The woman, who likely died in childbirth, also had dark skin, and those people's genetic material shows their skin color to be at least like today's people living in North Africa, or in fact a bit darker, Nielsen said. End quote.